In this tutorial, we're going to look at UV mapping. So UV mapping is a process of allowing us to take a 3D mesh and flatten it out into a 2D space to be able to apply textures more accurately onto that mesh. Excuse me. If we were just to take a mesh and put a texture on this, we have no control of, or a little control over, how it actually is applied to the mesh itself. So UVs give us that functionality or that extra control. So UVs live in, or the menu set for UVs lives up here in the UV menu in Maya under the modeling tab. So if we're going to UVs, and our main area really that we're going to be working on is a UV editor. So just bring this over, just drag this off. So this is our UV window here. Okay. In newer versions of Maya, this is really a major overhaul. It's got so much better to be able to do unwrapping within Maya. So let's have a look at some of the things we can do with this. First of all, I'm going to bring up some of the tools within this. So under our tools menu, we have this Show UV Toolkit, and that I'm drag this out. So what we can do with this is all the options on here. We can actually dock this into our UV window. So if we just go over to the side here, we get this blue line, and that just allows me to dock that in there. I'm just going to just resize this a little bit so I can just see a little better what's going off. So when we're actually working with UVs, we want to be able to see this checkerboard. This is a really useful tool in actually showing us how our UVs are working in a model. So this is up here, and by default this isn't clicked on, so if we just click that off, this is how it normally looks. So as we check that on, we can see our checkerboard working on there. Okay, and what we're looking for with a set of good UVs is for these squares to be square, not stretched out, not rectangular. And we're also looking for them to be evenly sized over all the surfaces of this. Okay, so that's just something that we're looking out for good UVs. If I click on another example, so a sphere, you can see that actually these squares here are more rectangular, they're stretched out. And if we go to the top of this, you'll notice that they start getting a little deformed, and they also start decreasing in size as well. So those UVs wouldn't be as effective when we're putting a texture on. You get some stretching in the texture over the surface of it. So if you wanted a material to be evenly placed over this, you wouldn't get that with this particular mesh and this particular set of UVs. Okay. Click on a cylinder, we have the same kind of thing, that actually from the top and bottom that's fine. But if I look around the side of that, we're getting these stretched out. And we'll kind of talk about the reasons for that. Okay. Same kind of thing with the torus, and on a plane object we have perfect UVs laid out on that. I'll actually just go to this example for a second just to illustrate how we can change our UVs initially. So on this, if I right click and go into UVs and go into the UVs themselves, UVs essentially act like, or they are placed at exactly the same points as all the vertex points on our mesh. The thing to note first of all about these is we can actually manipulate the UVs within our UV editor, but it doesn't affect the actual mesh. So just to show that, if I go into the UV editor and I'm on my UVs here, if I drag around, say these UVs here, we can still use our move tool and our rotate and scale tools within this window. So if I start dragging this out, we're actually changing the UVs on this, but notice that the mesh stays exactly the same. So as I bring these in, one of the things we are doing is we're now changing the UVs themselves. So by doing this, we're actually stretching these out. And this again is an important thing to note, that actually what we're doing here is we're changing the aspect ratio of this. So when you're looking at UVs, you're looking at the actual UVs themselves to represent as much as they can the original model. So here we have a perfect square. Now in our UV editor, we start getting a rectangle. So these are stretching out. It's trying to stretch these over the entire surface. So we brought this in, but those checkerboards there are trying to stretch over the entire surface of that. So if I bring this back to where it was, we start getting those squares again. If I take this over this area and stretch it out, then we start to shrink these down, essentially. So we're actually squashing in the other axes as we're bringing these down. So again, this is trying to make these more UVs go a bigger area. So try to keep the same aspect ratio, the same proportions within your UV as your original mesh. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave this tutorial here, and in the next tutorial we'll start looking at some of these options that we can use to start unwrapping our objects or doing UV layouts.